We are continuing with the type of abrasives, silicon carbide, especially hard, more than alumina, and friable, ideal for sanding metal, plaster, fiberglass, any one of them, even in some tool, cutting tools and so on. Ceramic, I mean all are ceramics, but this is named ceramic. Ceramic sandpaper, hardest and most expensive. Hard particles are deposited on a backing through a sol gel process, solution gel process, forming a colloidal suspension of metal salts placed into a mold, then series of drying and heat treatments to convert into a wet solid gel. So sol gel process. Further drying into extremely hard ceramic. If you just type sol gel, then you can see the process and so on, anywhere in a diagram and so on. Generally found on belt sanders used to level and shape wood. And when we say colloidal solution, so I am just telling you a colloid is a type of chemical mixture in which one substance is dispersed evenly throughout another. Particles of the dispersed substance are only suspended in the mixture, unlike in a solution in which they are completely dissolved. So it is a solution type where it is not a real solution, it is not dissolved. The particles are just suspended, so it is called a colloid, right? So ceramic sandpaper is the costliest abrasive. Sandpapers are classified as coated abrasive, right? Coated abrasive, isn't it? That there is paper or cloth on which we have coated it. So particles are bonded to flexible backing. Following other forms of abrasives used in the commercial processes, right? Those are sandpaper. These are other lapping abrasives. Extremely fine particles used for very fine polishing. You know, in machining, lapping is even more than grinding, right? So typically sold as dry powder or paste, applied to with water to a rotating wheel, which becomes a grinding wheel. For example, diamond dust, which is the hardest lapping abrasive. If you have done microscopy in material science and so on, then initially you keep on grinding level 1, level 2, level 3, and finally when you say we are polishing it, then you use diamond paste, right? So lapping is that process. Bonded abrasives fuse, right? Melt and fuse hard ceramic particles with a binding material, can be pressed into useful shapes. So this is great that rather than having a paper or some other, you can directly shape it into whatever shape you want, like a round piece or like a flat piece and so on. So you can shape it into grinding wheels, cylinders, blocks, cones and so on. The primary technique for forming of bonded abrasives is called powder pressing, right? Powder pressing, bonded abrasive. Powder pressing is like, you see, if it was a metal, you would call it powder metallurgy. Powder metallurgy. You use pressure and temperature and so on and give it a certain shape and a certain dye. But here it is a ceramic, so this is called powder pressing, and you get bonded abrasives, right? Just like in a previous case, sol gel, making a solid gel was the other process of making it. Processing of ceramics. Powder pressing, we just told you powder pressing. Unlike polymers and metals, ceramics cannot be formed by melting and pouring through a die into a mold, right? This is a very important sentence. You see, casting is a whole huge world where you melt and then let it solidify in a mold. So you can do sand casting and evaporative casting and this and that and die casting. But you see, you have to melt the metal inside a certain container. That certain container is the ceramic. Inside the furnace there is a lining. But if you want to melt the ceramic itself, then what will be the pot in which you will melt? You can't do it. So therefore, casting type of work is not possible for ceramics. Particles are mixed with a binding agent, water for example, that lubricates them during compaction and then forced into a shape under pressure. So this is the powder pressing. Simplest method, uniaxial powder pressing. Uniaxial, you pressurize only in one direction. Ceramic powder is compressed in a single direction by a metal die. Isotactic powder pressing. Ceramic material is placed in a rubber chamber and hydrostatic pressure is used to apply uniform pressure in all directions. Isotactic, that is why. Significantly more expensive than uniaxial pressing, right? So you are doing powder pressing. If you press only say in the vertical direction, then it is uniaxial. But if you want to press in all directions, so it is pressed uniformly in all directions, then this isotactic powder pressing. We are again just giving you the names and just the basic idea. Each one of them in the manufacturing and in the complete machine setup will have a lot of details. But as I keep on reminding you that if you or I are working in an actual ceramics place, then from day one of our training we will be doing it, and then we will see the real details. Sintering, right? You have heard of this word before. We have told you of sintering in other products, now in composites. Fused particles, particles that glue together and become one. Fused particles produced in powder pressing must be sintered to improve the properties. You have already done powder pressing. Now you do sintering. So particles are heated, causing the grain boundaries between them to coalesce, and interstitial regions shrink and eventually form a small spherical pores. So this is just a schematic diagram that you have lots of small spheres. They are already powder pressed. When you do sintering, then this glues together, that glues together, and by doing this you get globules where individual spheres and so on have gelled together. So pressure and heating, right? In powder pressing you are already pressurizing, either uniaxial or isotactic, and here then you are following it by sintering, pressure and heating. Now some more classes, right? Abrasives were there as the first major class of ceramics. So glasses, you know, are a major category for a very long time, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years they have been there. Here we are showing you sort of a phase diagram, pressure temperature diagram, and alpha quartz, beta tridymite, beta cristobalite, right? Liquid, vapor, temperatures, temperature here, temperature there, and so on. Different from most solids, non-crystalline material, non-crystalline. Now this is critical, right? That mostly we have seen that ceramics were crystalline in nature, but glass is sort of a non-crystalline ceramic. Can be made from number of metallic oxides, but silica glass is the most common and made from crystalline silicon dioxide. So, right, common sand, silica, and so on. Phase diagram of silica is here, silicon dioxide. This is the phase diagram of silica. So this is crystalline, and from there we make glass. Most common crystal structure for silicon dioxide is quartz or alpha quartz, which is a trigonal structure which we have not studied, but we can if we like. When heated, it undergoes a series of phase transformations and eventually melts, right? Eventually melts. So above 1700 Celsius and so on. Upon cooling, high viscosity of the molten silica prevents the molecules from aligning into the energetically favored beta cristobalite form. An amorphous glass, non-crystalline, is formed instead of the crystalline structure. This process is called vitrification. Vitrification. Right? So you take silica, this is crystalline in nature, you take it through heating and this and that, and once it is completely molten, and this you can, because there are other ceramics which are much higher temperature than this. So this melting of 1800 degrees or 1900 degrees you can do. But when you quickly cool it and so on, then it was initially crystalline, but now it solidifies into a non-crystalline shape. And this process is called vitrification, which is the main process of glass making. Silica structure, the tetrahedron for a silicate. Basis structure of glass is based on the silicate tetrahedron, right? Silicon and oxygen. Silicon atom sits in the center, while oxygen is in each corner. The silicon oxygen bonds possess both ionic and covalent characteristics. So the silica, the original silica, is like this, and it is a tetrahedron, and it is a ceramic, and then you will find other things, right, like glass and so on. Loose networks. Although there is no larger scale crystalline order in the glass, the tetrahedra form a loose network with corner to corner contact. We have shown you in basic material science that if the whole material is exact crystalline, then you say that there is a crystal lattice structure. But sometimes this loose network, that there is a small amount of crystallinity here and there. It is by large amorphous, but in small places it has this tetragonal structure and so on. So there is a small amount of crystallinity, say 80% amorphous, 20% crystalline, and so on. And then if you are exactly doing glasses and so on, then there will be equations and so on, that if this percent of crystallinity is there, then what will be your calculations and of strength and so on and so forth. Additives to glasses, right? Glasses are there. This, for example, wine decanter or any liquid container, lead glass, it is called lead glass. Network modifiers. Metal oxides are added to reduce the viscosity of loose networks. Oxygen atoms from the oxides break up the network by occupying a tetrahedral site. We were saying earlier that because of the high viscosity, it goes through vitrification, right? So here you are reducing the viscosity, the thickness and the heavy density you are reducing by network modifiers. Intermediate oxides, molecules incapable of forming their own network but able to join the existing loose network, used to enhance specific properties. For example, aluminosilicate glass, right? This was lead glass, directly metal. Aluminosilicate glass can withstand high temperatures. Lead oxide increases the index of refraction, making the glass more lustrous or shiny, which is ideal for crystal glassware, windows and jewelry and so on. You know that if you have glasses and plates and so on, then if they are made of crystal glass, then the quality and the beauty and so on are much higher. They are heavier also, but then their cost is high. So you can add color, you can add beautification, you can reduce the weight, increase the weight. Additives. Additives used as coloring agents. Vaseline glass, just imagine Vaseline, right? Addition of metallic oxide pigments. Pigments are coloring, dye, dye, right? Coloring agents. Transparent or translucent glass. Transparent, light can pass through it, but it is still colored. Translucent, right? It is between opaque and transparent with different attractive colors. Most striking, uranium oxide, which is green yellow glass, often called Vaseline glass, glows in the dark. Glows in the dark, not just colored, glows in the dark. And here there are different colors: amber, black, light blue, dark blue, and the additives: manganese oxide, manganese copper iron oxides, copper oxides, and so on. So you see, there are beautiful videos on YouTube and so on of glass making. Complicated, simple shapes, colors, how do you add this, how do you refine it, how do you make it into a crystal glass and so on. So glasses are one category of ceramics, but just one category is hundreds of millions of dollars of product around the world, isn't it? So it's a big thing, even though it is only one category of ceramics. Production of glass, you can just read through it, that what is the float glass process, the float glass process. So quickly go through this float glass process, and after that we will go to the other category of ceramics, right? So we have done abrasives to quite some extent, and we have done glasses to quite some extent. We have done basic calculations in ceramics and so on, and we are continuing.